All right, it is now 9 o'clock where I am. We have people joining us from all around Australia. Thank you for being here. Thank you particularly to the Western Australian bunch, getting up so early in the morning. We have, I think Dr. Kumar is here from Texas, or are you in India at the moment, Dr. Kumar? We have Bajena. Good morning, Bajena. We have Dr. Jackie Schiff, I think, from London. We have people from all around the place joining us today. So welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm Judith Richards. I'm the creator of the Richards Trauma Process. The Richards Trauma Process, or TRTP, is a relative newcomer to the world of trauma therapy. I've been teaching it for 3 years just here in Australia so far, and we have about 140 practitioners around Australia. Who are they? They're psychologists, psychotherapists, nurses, paramedics, a truly great bunch. So I'm going to present to you for the next 35-40 minutes on trauma. For the last 15-20 minutes of the call, I'll be answering any questions. So if during the presentation you have a question, just type it in. If you squiggle your cursor around at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a chat bubble that will come up that you can ask a question. There's also a Q&A area where you can go in there. So don't hold off till the end. Put your questions in as we go along, and I'll endeavour to answer them all at the end of the call. So we're going to talk about trauma today, just for a change. We're going to come from a slightly different perspective. We're going to come from the perspective of PTSD, full-blown PTSD, and those two problematic issues of PTSD, rage and guilt. They're problematic, of course, for the person going through it. It's a dreadful place to be, but it's also problematic for the therapist. What do you do with that rage? Because anger management just doesn't cut it. This is not irritability. This is a lit match thrown at a pool of petrol. It comes from nowhere, and it takes over the person. How do I know? Because it used to do it to me. I used to be feeling quite balanced and driving along, and then it would be like a firestorm would erupt within me and take me over, or a small little trigger. And it's like you stand back, dissociated, well, I used to, and just watch and come to, as it were, afterwards. I used to be driving up and down the freeway with the windows up and just screaming, trying to get rid of the rage before I got around somebody I loved. And that's another issue with the guilt, and we'll go there. So this rage there is no escalation, there's no gradual rising of temperature. It is just bang. That's what I'm talking about today. Anger management will not touch it because the person has absolutely no idea that it's coming, and they have no control over it. And what happens, you come to afterwards, and the children are cowering under the dining table, and even the cat and dog are under there, and the spouse, your partner, is between you and the children, and you come to and you realize your family are absolutely terrified of you. This leads to the guilt. This often leads to suicide because it would be the most responsible thing to withdraw completely from the family. So what happens? The person with PTSD withdraws emotionally, they withdraw physically, they try and protect those they love from themselves, and particularly from that rage. And it can get to a point where they think the most responsible and loving thing to do would be simply to commit suicide, to take ourselves out, away from the family and leave them in peace. So it's huge. And suicide is the highest cause of death in 14 to 44-year-olds in Australia. Not saying that they all have PTSD. I'm just saying that there are a lot of people in terms of the numbers. I speak to a lot of psychologists who work in the area of PTSD and psychotherapists, etc. And there seems to be not a lot of knowledge about the numbers. 2009 census in Australia, 1.7 million with PTSD, and obviously some of them misdiagnosed, but there are a lot of people who are not diagnosed who are walking around just thinking that they're going mad. Certainly people come to me with an anger issue. They think the anger is the issue. They don't realize it's the trauma or the nightmares or whatever it is. So there are a lot of people with PTSD. And who are these people? Defense personnel, certainly. Emergency services personnel, yes. But they're only a small number of these, a couple million people in Australia, and of course around the world. It's a growth industry, unfortunately. But who are they? People who've gone through accident, motor vehicle, industrial, and a big proportion of them are those who have survived domestic violence. Some homes are war zones. And also those people, of course, who've lived through childhood sexual abuse, etc. So if you're working in the area of domestic violence, hello, a lot of your clients will have PTSD. So rage and guilt, they're huge, they're massive. They run the life of somebody with full-blown PTSD. How do I know? Because I was there. So in order to understand the rage and guilt of trauma and why is it there and all of that and how do you deal with it, we have to begin with the physiology. Let's go back to the physiology of trauma. Let's look at a normal person because some people get stuck in trauma and some people do not get stuck in trauma. But let's look at the physiological changes that happen with PTSD. Some people think, oh, well, they should just get over it. They should just not think about it. Well, hello, that's not going to happen because my brain has changed. The structure of my brain has changed. Let's go into that. Let's look at a normal person and what happens when there's a traumatic event. So here's a normal person here at calm. They go along, they have a stressful event, they release stress hormones, they come back to calm. They have a life-threatening event, they go up here to fight, flight, freeze. The danger passes. They self-regulate. And that's the story of their life. What happens when someone gets stuck in trauma, however, is that they never come down. And of course, I see it as a spectrum. Some people are continually in fight, flight, freeze, and some people trigger up into fight, flight, freeze. What happens in the brain is an interesting thing. Let's just talk about what happens when there's a singular catastrophic event. For example, the Black Saturday bushfires. The fires are coming. The person releases stress hormones, of course, adrenaline, etc. The body becomes overwhelmed with these high levels of stress hormones. The hippocampus, that part of the brain responsible for memory, gets overwhelmed with stress hormones. It never takes the event. It never does its job. It never makes it yesterday, last week, last year. It doesn't file it in the filing cabinet in the correct folder of that day at that time. So what happens? That event gets stored in the body and in the unconscious. It's like a videotape loop that's always there that gets triggered when there's anything vaguely similar to the event itself. For example, someone who grew up with an abusive, alcoholic father, and then they go into a relationship. Anytime there's a male with a raised voice, they go into fight, flight, freeze. So that's what happens, and the brain begins to change. The hippocampus, responsible for memory, gets smaller and smaller. The amygdala, who are responsible for triggering the fight, flight, freeze response, just like a muscle that's used and gets bigger and stronger, the amygdala get bigger and stronger. They get better and better at triggering fight, flight, freeze. And they do it more and more often. So that's what happens in the structure of the brain. It's like everything in this person's being is screaming, I'm not safe. And of course, they have the hypervigilance reactions. They can't sit near an open door. They jump at every shadow. Our job as therapists, of course, is to bring people from here down to here. And what's that? It's over. How do you do that? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do you bring someone from I'm not safe to it's over? And of course, up here, fight, flight, freeze. What is the rage response of PTSD? It's fight. We are mammals. We have an inbuilt mechanism to aggressively protect ourselves and aggressively protect our young. It's innate, and it gets left switched on when someone gets stuck in PTSD, when they get stuck in the fight, flight, freeze response, when they get stuck in fight. How on earth do you turn that off? Well, Bessel van der Kolk, Peter Levine, top trauma specialists, these days are agreeing that two things have to happen to bring someone from here, I'm not safe, to here, it's over. They say that those two things are, number one, the person has to be moved to an empowered position in regard to the event, in regard to the trauma. We'll talk more about how you do that. Peter Levine talks about the need to tap into that primal instinct of protective aggression in order to unlock the frozen hippocampus. We'll go into that more in a moment. So that's the first thing, move a person to an empowered position in regard to the trauma. From here to there. The next thing is the body and the unconscious. No, the body, this is Bessel van der Kolk and Peter Levine, both say the body has to know it's over. And I'll go further and I'll say the body and the unconscious has to know it's over and I'm safe now. Why do I say the body and the unconscious? Well, the unconscious runs every chemical reaction in the body, every electrical response. It's very important that the unconscious knows it's over, because it's in the unconscious and the body that that videotape loop is stored, because it hasn't become a memory. It hasn't been filed into memory. Why do I say I'm safe now? It's over, I'm safe now. If we just do a little exercise, please join in, wherever you are, and say out loud, and really mean it, it's over. And notice what happens in your body. Let's do it again. It's over. Now let's take it to the next step. It's over and I'm safe now. Feel it in your body. Let's say it all together. It's over and I'm safe now. And there is resolution in that. It brings things to a close. In TRTP, and I'll tell you where we do that. When we take the client to that place, it's over and I'm safe now. What happens is the Parkinson's-like tremor that's often accompanying extreme PTSD, it just disappears, never to return. Often 10, 20 years just drains from a person, their whole body, you see it, you physically see them go from this fight, flight, freeze to here. Because fight, flight, freeze, what does it feel like? I don't know how many of you as therapists have had extreme PTSD. It feels like the accelerator and the brake, pedal to the metal 24/7, doing burnouts. And it's exhausting and it impacts the body. We won't go into the various impacts on the gut, etc. It can cause autoimmune disease, lupus, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. When we use TRTP with people with these conditions, they're gone. So I'm not safe to it's over, I'm safe now. And they come back to here. And they just become normally reactive instead of hanging from the ceiling by the fingertips. So where to from here? How do you actually do that? Well, what I'm going to give you is the first steps of TRTP, the first steps of the TRTP process that you can take and use immediately to be more effective no matter what therapy you're using. And then I'll go on and give you a quick outline overview of what we do to create this so quickly. So the things to use first are, and just let me clean this off for a second. We use the T. I've had so many therapists contact me after learning this in a workshop or a webinar. Excuse me, I have a cold. You may have noticed. I get messages from therapists. Just one moment, thank you. Thank you for your patience. I get emails, messages from therapists saying just in using these first steps of TRTP, they go home much less exhausted and their results are much greater. So what do? We use the T. We say to a client, you're here. You get to choose. Because it begins with a conscious decision. Do you want to be not well or well? And people often get cross at that point. Do you think I want to be like this? You know, I've spent so much money trying to get well. No, calm down. Just make a conscious decision because this is where it begins. Not well or well. They go, well, of course I want to be well. Okay. Who's responsible for you becoming well? You'd be surprised at the number of people who say, well, you are because you're the therapist. Well, no, there's two people in the room and it's not me. Oh, well, I'm responsible. Right, good. What would be the worst thing about being well? So why do we do this? Is to bring up secondary gain, secondary benefits straight away so that we can deal with those. Well, it might be that I have to go back to work, that I have to find a job. It could be anything. I had a woman who said that she would lose her husband. I said, why? She said, because they were separated. He only came back to look after her. So we had to deal with that. So I'm just going to go a little bit further than not well and well and tell you exactly what I do. And I'm sorry, I'm going to swear. So I used to specialize in violent, angry men brought against their will. These people would be brought in by the men in their family. They'd be off to kill their ex-girlfriend or the wife and the new boyfriend and the children. You see it in the paper all the time. And they were not exactly compliant. They didn't even want to be there. And so they would be there and I would be a little bit in their face because it interrupts the neural superhighway. I'm going to go and do this. No one's going to stop me. And I'd say, just make a decision. Do you want to be fucked or fan-fucking-tastic? You think you're fucked now? This is nothing. There's a world of pain coming right at your head. Make a decision. I can take you to here. What is it that you want to do? I won't go into the rest of it, what I do, but within minutes, they would be completely compliant. So we have a very interesting technique of getting people to be compliant very, very quickly. However, having said that, some people, as we know, are invested in their own illness. It is part of the cure to wish to be cured, as the great philosopher Seneca said. So not well. Well, you also say victim or victor. Victim or victor. You know, dreadful things happen. They should never have happened and they happen to you and that's a real shame, but it has happened. You can have what has happened destroy the rest of your life, or you can have what has happened propel you to extraordinary. You can go from fuck to fan-fucking-tastic. I'll take you by the hand. And as long as you engage, and I'll teach you to engage, as long as you engage, you can expect an extraordinary outcome. So that's the first step in TRTP. The next is who's responsible for your becoming well. And at that point, so many therapists go, oh, I knew that it was not a good thing to be emotionally invested in the outcome and want the cure, want my client to become well more than they wanted to become well. But in doing that and handing it back to them, who's responsible? Oh, I'm so much less exhausted. And it allows the space for the client to step up and take responsibility. Because so many people come to us and they expect us to throw fairy dust at them. And bingo, they get well. Well, it's not going to happen. They have to be engaged. So that's the first step with TRTP. The next thing is we educate them about why things are happening. We show them the graph and the number of people who will point to somewhere on the graph and say, that's me, that's me. Do you mean I'm not nuts? No, you're not nuts. Well, that's me. Yes, and there is power in that knowledge. The other thing that happens is we in session 1, TRTP is a 3-session process. In session 1, we change the unconscious core beliefs that keep these patterns of behavior continuing. I'll go into that in a moment. Session 2 is the rubber hits the road. We take the emotional charge from the past. We bring them from fight, flight, freeze to calm. We have the hippocampus make the event a memory, and the person becomes calm. I'll go into that in a moment. And in the 3rd session, we create the future, because people who are stuck in trauma have no future focus, and that's fun here. So let's start about changing the unconscious core beliefs. What on earth am I talking about? Well, from even before we're born until we're 7 years old, we take on ideas of who we are and how the world works. If our mother, when she's pregnant with us, is under extreme duress, extreme stress, we take on her stress hormones. We pick up that I'm not safe. For some people, birth is a life-threatening experience. And some people are born into less than celebration. And even for those who are born into celebration, we take on ideas from our own tiny person's perspective, or from things that people in authority, adults in authority, say to us. For example, the grade 1 teacher who says, you'll never amount to anything because you're stupid, etc. In session 1, we change the unconscious core beliefs from the negative to the positive. These unconscious core beliefs are the foundation of our life. There's a reason why the Nazis and the Catholic Church say, give me a child till they're 7 and they're mine for life. It's because that's when our basic core beliefs are laid down. What are these basic core unconscious beliefs? They're things like, so for example, someone's grown up in a violent household, they go on to be bullied, they go on to have violent relationships in adulthood. What's going on there? What could be the unconscious core belief that's driving that? I'm going to swear again, sorry. It's I'm shit and I deserve to be treated like shit. I deserve to suffer. I deserve to be punished. And no matter where that person goes in the world, they will attract a partner who will be abusive, until you change the unconscious core beliefs and change the whole trajectory of their life. If you're working in weight loss, for example, and someone has been sexually abused as a child and they are now morbidly obese as an adult, and you're trying to help them to become slimmer and healthy and well, and if their unconscious core belief is from when they were little and they were sexually abused, is if I'm attractive at all, I'll be abused. Well, the unconscious is in charge of keeping us safe. And the unconscious will be saying, when the conscious mind is saying, I'll get well and I'll get healthy, and the unconscious mind is saying, no, it's not safe to be slim and attractive. And the person might lose weight for a short time, but it'll come back on, because the unconscious's job is to keep the person safe, and their conscious runs every electrical response, every chemical reaction in the body. Hello, we've all seen the pictures of the iceberg, and the conscious mind's this tiny bit at the top, and the big part is the unconscious. The big part is the one in charge. If the unconscious has the belief it's not safe to be well, it's not safe to be attractive, whatever it is, it's not safe to be loved, for example, growing up in a violent household. Anyone who I let close to me, who loves me, will abandon me, will turn on me, will betray me, will hurt me. Then you're trying to work in relationships therapy, trying to help people to create intimate relationship with all of the unconscious, this great big part of the mind going, no, it's not safe to be in relationship. Well, hello, there will be self-sabotage. Of course there will be, because the unconscious will keep us safe. In terms of doing this work, we change the unconscious core beliefs to the positive in this first session, so that going forward into the second session, which is the main one where the rubber hits the road, there will be no unconscious sabotage. So how do we do that? How do we know what the unconscious core beliefs are? Well, we get people to do homework. Why do we do that? We do that because we don't want to re-traumatize people. We just get them to bring a list of the age they were, the top 10 to 12 distressing events in their life. We don't say trauma, because people associate trauma with war. They don't see that growing up in a violent household is trauma or whatever it is. So we say the top 10 to 12 distressing events in your life, a list of them, the name of the event and who was there. That's it. No essays. We don't actually need the story. People come to a TRTP practitioner and we don't take a full life history. No, we've just got the homework, and that shows us the pattern. There's always a pattern. And for many clients, that is a great aha when they see, my God, it's the same thing happening again and again and again. Yes, hello, because we are running on our unconscious core beliefs. If we have the big unconscious core belief, I'm shit and deserve to be treated like shit, well, hello. We need only go to the supermarket and the checkout chick will treat us badly. It's not about what's out there. It's about what's here. In terms of the homework, the relief on many clients' face when, well, I don't have to tell the story. No, like the soldier, 26 years old, landmine, our team. Well, don't you want me to tell the story in all its gory details? No. I don't want to know. I don't need to know. Do you want to tell it? I said, no, I don't want to tell it. Every time I tell it, I go back there. I don't want to go back there. I didn't like it the first time. Well, good. So TRTP does resolve trauma without re-traumatising, and that's part of it, that homework. From that homework, we can work out what are the unconscious core beliefs. We have a list, and you just tick off what would that be. What would be driving that behaviour? The continual abusive partners. Well, it's not safe to be loved. Anyone who loves me will hurt me. And so we create that. I won't go into it any further, but you get the general idea. From fight, flight, freeze to calm. That's what we do in the second session. How do we do that? As I said, Peter Levine says in order to unlock the frozen hippocampus, we have to, and the frozen fight, flight, freeze response, we have to connect the client with the aggressive mammalian response, instinctive response of self-protection, aggressive self-protection or protection of young. How on earth do you do that? Well, you know, it's an interesting thing. In each of these 3 sessions, we use hypnosis. Why? Because it makes logical good sense, because trauma is not stored in the conscious mind, it's stored in the body and in the unconscious, as we've said. And so we create theatre of the mind. This is not Ericksonian hypnosis. It's very direct. We create theatre of the mind. The body and the unconscious will absolutely believe what we richly envisage, what we richly imagine. I'm sure the word magic comes from the word imagination. So we take clients through various rich scenarios. They create the movie in their head. I say, I'll do everything at my side to create a fabulous result, an extraordinary result. But I can't get in your head. The richer you make your internal experience, the more profound will be your outcome. Are you up for that? I go, yes. So what do we do in session 2 to move the person to an empowered position in regard to the trauma? Well, when people are stuck at that fight, flight, freeze, generally what has happened is that they're in a life-threatening event and they had no control. They thought they were going to die and they had no power in that situation, or they were witnessing it with others. So how do we bring them back to power? What has happened is that aggressive self-protection has never kicked in for whatever reason. So we create scenarios where we dissociate. You're on the edge of a movie scene and you're watching a scene. You step in, take the person out, the younger you out, and you stand up to the perpetrator as the protector of that other. Particularly women in our society have a tough time tapping into the aggression of self-protection, but my goodness, we'll stand up for our children. So we create the scenario as if the younger person is our child, and we put them in safety and have the client step up and take control of the situation. How dare you put a hand on that child? Can I just put in a proviso here? Please don't use this at home. Our training program is an extensive program that goes over several months. Use the beginning, use the T, who's responsible for you becoming well, what's going to be the worst thing about being well. You can actually take it a little bit further and say, just imagine. They've tapped into the unconscious, that it's 12 months down the road and everything's changed and life is good. That is a wonderful tool to use, because then they can go there And their body and their unconscious knows where they're going. But coming back to this, I'm just going to give you an outline of TRTP, why it works, but please don't use it until you have further training, because you can actually re-traumatize people. Please act responsibly. Thank you. So we move the person through theatre of the mind in hypnosis to a position where they are in absolute control of the event. The body and the unconscious believe that this is true, that they have gone back and taken control. As I said, and I'll say it again, the body and the unconscious believe what we richly imagine. So if you richly imagine taking a wedge of lemon and sinking your teeth into it and sucking it, I've just had it now, your body will do the saliva response. Your body has just believed that you are actually doing that. In the same way, we can use theatre of the mind to create rich experiences of making things right. Talking about making things right, whenever there is a wrong done, there is always anger. There is always anger. That anger at the time of the event, whether it's a soldier having friends blown up by landmines or whatever it is, that anger never gets released in a healthy way. We're not just talking about the anger of the victim. There is a massive difference between a victim standing up to a perpetrator, for example, and going, "Oh, you bastard, you hurt me. It's terrible." And the protector self putting the young person into safety behind them, standing between the young person or the younger person, it may only have been last year, standing between the younger person and the perpetrator as the protector, the mother lioness, for example, if it's a woman, and going, "How dare you touch that child?" What happens is we are put in a powerful position. We are moved to a powerful position in regard to the trauma. If someone goes in as the victim, there's no power there. They are re-traumatized by re-experiencing the same emotions that they had at the time of the event. There is no power there. That just re-traumatizes. So we take them in as the protector self and we do a scenario, and then we tell the body and the unconscious, because we're in hypnosis, we can speak directly. I'm talking to you, the unconscious, and you, the body. You know that you're no longer 8 years old. You're now 52. You're in a different state. That man is not here, or that woman is not here. It's over. You're safe now. And every part of you can now return to calm. And you can speak directly to the hippocampus and tell it to make it a memory, because it's over, you're safe now. And at that point, we often witness miracles happening. There's a question, do you have to deal with absolutely every trauma, every event? No. For some people, you'd be there for years. We just do the top 3. And it's like taking one leg out from a 4-legged table. The rest just fall down. They just fall over. It's extraordinary how it happens. So that's what we do in the second session with the top 3 events. In terms of the guilt, because we deal with the guilt there is rage and there's guilt. There can be survivor guilt. There's all different types of guilt with PTSD, isn't there? There's survivor guilt. There's the guilt that somehow it was my fault. And then there is the guilt that's very closely associated with that rage. So how do we get rid of that guilt? Working with paramedics, for example, who, God, what they go through. Working with specialist doctors in hospitals. All these people who see the most dreadful things and are very traumatized by it because it's day after day. What do? We take them to the courtroom. In their imagination, they go to court. They stand in front of a judge and are accused of not having done enough for that patient. You are not a good doctor. You should have done more. You're inadequate. What happens then is the jury stand up and say, "No, that's not true. Not guilty, Your Honour," etc., etc., etc. Not guilty at all. You're a fine man. You're a fine doctor. You're a fine father. You've done nothing wrong. Not guilty, Your Honour. And the judge bangs his gavel and not guilty. What happens to the client then? They experience it as if it's true. It's an extraordinary thing. And we use this ability of the body and the unconscious to experience something as if it's true, as if it's been fixed, as if we've been pronounced not guilty. And we believe it. Our body and our unconscious believe that that is true. We are not guilty. So that's how we deal with the rage. When someone goes from it's over, you're not there anymore, and every part of you can return to calm, what happens is the symptoms of PTSD just disappear. What are those symptoms? Excuse me, one moment. What are those symptoms? Rage, nightmares, gut problems, hypervigilance, never being able to relax, never being able to calm down, never being able to, not being able to sleep because the nightmares lurk there, and also the unconscious keeping people safe. You can't go to sleep, something will sneak up on you. You're not safe. So at that point, the symptoms just disappear. The symptoms of immuno disorders, the chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, lupus particularly. I have seen it happen with multiple sclerosis. And then third session, in hypnosis, we create the future. We actually take the person 12 months down the track or whatever it is. We also, in the third session, it's only a small session, we tick through that everything that person wanted to move away from. They bring us, as well as the timeline, and it's not timeline therapy a la NLP, can I just say. It is definitely not timeline therapy a la NLP. But as well as the timeline, they bring from, I want to move away from this in my life. And then the most important list is to, I want to move to this. This is how I want to feel. In the third session, we go through and tick off that everything is moved, and they have moved themselves to all this list, the to list, where they want to be. I want to be confident and relaxed. I want to be able to wake up feeling some joy. I want, etc., etc. So you get the idea. So that's what we do. The symptoms after session 2, at the end of session 2, simply disappear. It's not terribly difficult. So there we are. That's a quick rundown on what we do in TRTP, how we get rid of that rage. There is no anger management involved. I worked with a lovely, lovely specialist medical doctor the other day, a pediatrician. I finished working with him, I don't know, a month ago. And he had that rage of PTSD. He had been through the most horrendous events, and he was getting into real trouble at work because he was going into that rage. And at home, it was even worse because he was going into it more. He said to me at the end of the third session, I thought that after doing this work, I'd be able to control my rage more easily. And I said, and? He said, well, I'm not controlling my rage. And I went, He said, there is no rage. There's no anger. It's gone. I try and bring it up and it's just gone. I try and get mad about something at work or at home. No, it's wonderful. So on that note, we'll open up for some questions. Now, so feel free, type in your questions. Thank you very much, and we will answer them. Someone has asked, does this work with children? We work with children differently. As part of our policy, we have that we will only work with a child if we first work with one of the parents. This goes back to the work of Bruce Lipton. Bruce Lipton in the 70s was doing proper science. He got a big award for discovering that our cells have only 2 switches, shut down, survival, or thriving. There's nothing in between. We're either thriving, the cell is thriving, or shut down. It can't be just half turned on, no. It's off or on. And it's environmental triggers that cause this change. He says we are a community of 50 trillion cells. We have 2 switches, shut down, survival, or thriving. There is nothing in between. He says if you are not thriving, it's the environment stupid. I'm not calling you stupid, it's just what he says. I take it further. I say the main environment's between our ears, those unconscious core beliefs and the storage of trauma, etc. And of course, there's a reason why we say toxic workplaces, toxic relationships. Of course, the relationships around us and the environment we find ourselves in are massively important. We go through this with a new client. So the environment is all important. We have to switch people on to full life. So in terms of children, we have to have a parent who's got their acts together, who's balanced and calm, who can create the environment for that child. You can take a sick fish out of a sick pond, clean it up, put it in a clean pond, and it will thrive. Take a sick fish, clean it up, put it back into the toxic pond from where it came, where the issues came from, and it will get sick again. So we have a policy, there's no point working with a child if they're going back into the toxic pond. We first work with at least one parent. Is this helpful with complex trauma and the consequent dissociative disorders like multiple personality disorders? Yes. Complex trauma, it makes no difference whether it's a singular catastrophic event. And no one just has a singular catastrophic event. The way I look at it is it's a balloon. I don't know why mine is red. Yours can be any color. But the stress of life, the distress of life builds up and builds up. If we take away the word trauma and just use distressing events, we get a much clearer picture of what goes on. So the distress of these distressing events builds up and builds up and builds up. When working with catastrophic trauma, for example, we take the emotional charge out of that balloon, out of earlier events, and then when we get to the catastrophic event, there's no pressure there. It's very easy to deal with. So getting back to your question, Annie Plowman, in terms of dissociative disorders, we go much more slowly in just bite-sized, gentle pieces, and we generally, with each part, bring that part to a place of it's over, I'm safe. So it takes longer, 7-8 sessions. But yes, normal dissociation and DID, yes, it can be. Certainly normal dissociation, that's just gone very quickly. What does creating the future involve? What is the homework done at the beginning? The homework done at the beginning is 3 lists. One is the top 10 to 12 distressing events of your life, and just how old were you, the age you were, the name of the event, and who was there. That's list 1. The second list is what you want to move away from in your life. For example, I don't want to wake up with dread every single day. I don't want to just erupt with rage towards my family members, whatever it is. And what do you want instead? What do you want to move to? And this is the most important list. We say to people, dream a little, because this is what we are going to create. I say to people, complex PTSD, that's nothing. It's a given. It's gone. The most important thing is what do you want to create instead, because that's what we're going to do. So that's the list, the homework. What does the creating the future involve? It's really simple. The unconscious is an extraordinary thing. We take people back to a couple of fabulous memories and they notice how they get there. Then we say, now it's a year in the future and you're there. What's going on? It's extraordinary what some people say. I remember I had a chef on one of the big Australian train journeys, and she suffered from extreme anxiety, and she went to a future where she was chefing in Canadian snowfields. She'd never thought of that. So the unconscious takes over at that point and creates a fabulous future. It's not difficult. There's some other questions here. Lynn Guy. Hello, Lynn. I'm a hypnotherapist and NLP practitioner. Would you kindly give a quick outline of the difference between the NLP timeline process and stage 2 of TRTP? Lynn, we don't have time for that. It would take too long. We do not take the person back to the event. In NLP timeline therapy, you go back over the timeline and go to the event. We don't do that. They didn't enjoy it the first time. They're not going to enjoy it the second time. If someone had taken me back to my dreadful events, I would have, sounds terrible, but I would have tracked them down and killed them and then killed myself. So horrendous were those events. So there's none of that. We take them back in a dissociated thing as the protector of the young them. They do not re-experience the event. They do not re-experience the emotions of the victim. So there's no re-traumatising. They go in as the protector self. So it's quite different. It has nothing in common with NLP timeline therapy. Where does this process stand, Annie again, where does this process stand in terms of legal implications? I do a lot of work with people through victim services. We have some of our psychologists, etc., who work with victims of crime, that sort of thing. There isn't an issue. In terms of Medicare, hypnosis, hypnotherapy is completely proven, accepted. And there's some more questions here. When is the next course and how long does it run for? The next intake is, it begins at the end of September. So what is it? If you go to this website, www.therichardstraumaprocess.com, take a cut lunch to type that one in, but you have to have the richardstraumaprocess.com, and click on the training page. You'll see the outline of the training. It begins with 2 months intensive, and then there's a 3 months not intensive. What that consists of, in the first 2 weeks, the new student does session 1 and session 2 of TRTP, working on their own stuff, just as their future clients will. They do that with their mentor. A mentor looks after about 4 new students. We have so much support in this program. So that mentor will hold their hand during the first 2 months of the program. After they've done their own stuff, they understand the power and the possibilities of what TRTP does. They've lived it themselves. And then there's a 3-day workshop. That's the only face-to-face, because the sessions can be online. I see most of my clients online. They can be anywhere in the world. We are no longer geographically constrained. It's wonderful. So you do the 2 sessions, go to the 3-day workshop, which is at University of Queensland in Brisbane. In that 3-day workshop, it's very experiential. You get lots of actual doing. By the end of that 3 days, you are able to go and start working with clients. We ask people to have 10 clients lined up, ready to go. You bring the client's homework to your mentor, and your mentor advises you and holds your hand, tells you what to do with each client. They do that on a video conference call with the other mentees, the other students that they are mentoring. So not only do you get advice on your own clients, but you look over the shoulder at the others. So by the end of the first 2 months, you have runs on the board, you have actual experience, and you know what you're doing. And you've not only worked with yours, but you've looked over the shoulder at the other students in your group and what happens for them. There's also a 2-hour video conference call each week, which I run, where we can't cover everything in that 3 days. So after that 3 days, we go further. That's just the foundation, and we add on to that with the 2-hour video conference call each week for the next 5 weeks. So that's the first 2 months. That's pretty full on. There's only the only part that's face-to-face is that 3-day workshop. After that, you go into the graduate community, and this is a wonderful part of TRTP. Once someone graduates, they're not just let to get on with it. No, we have extraordinary support. There's a 1-hour video conference call each week, which I run, where you can bring tricky cases. There's also an online forum, which is quite private, where you can ask for advice. I have this client, I'm not sure what's going on, blah, 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 blah. And you will have people with the most amazing wisdom, insight, and experience who will guide you what to do. Sometimes there's a conversation there with 40 different people. The backup support is extraordinary. Then after that 3 months in there, people can decide whether to stay in the community or not. So that is the training. Can you tell us about some of your tricky cases? Well, my trickiest case was Jason. As I said, I used to work with violent, angry men brought against their will. Jason, that morning that he was brought to me, had been pulled off strangling his wife. He'd smashed every window in her house, ex-wife, sorry. He had smashed every panel and window in her car, and he had broken her guitar over his head and had not had medical attention, so he came in with deep gashes and dried blood. He was very tall. He'd broken his neck 4 times. He pulled up his shirt and he had morphine patches for the pain. He'd been on a disability pension because of this for about 7 years or 9 years. He had very little movement. He couldn't move his neck. He could move his arms and his legs, but he looked like Frankenstein. Very tall, gashes. He just happened to be paranoid psychotic as well. By the end of our sessions, he had full movement of his neck. He was the angriest man I've ever met, a very dangerous man, the sort of person who, if he went into the pub and someone looked at him oddly, he'd find their car, he'd put a tow rope on that, attach it to his great big Land Cruiser and take that car across paddocks and smash it up into trees, etc. He was out of control because of childhood dreadful abuse. He just thought he was mad, and he had anyway. By the end of the session, he had full movement in his neck. He had no pain. He was very calm. He was still taken. I suggested he get taken to the local hospital, to the psych ward, to be assessed. The psych ward let him go. They said there was nothing wrong with him. That was on the Monday. By Friday, he was back at work as a panel beater. That was 3 3/4 years ago. He has not needed Panadol ever since. And he has a wonderful relationship now with all his children. He sends me photos of them camping all the time. So that was a tricky case. What if I would like a session for me as a client with you? Chris, send me an email. You can do that through the back page of the website, through contacts, or you can send me an email to communications@richardstraumaprocess.com. In terms of, there are people here talking about the training, go to this website and go to the training page, and at the bottom of the training page you can click on to make an appointment to speak about the training, and you can download an information pack, etc. So do that, and myself or one of the team will talk with you. There's a 20-minute question and answer session just on the phone, and we'll give you the information. To be a TRTP practitioner, you need to be a certain type of person. You need to be strong in who you are. This is not for cup of tea therapists. We don't accept everyone who applies. I mean, it sounds terrible, cup of tea therapist, but you know what I mean. This requires a leadership position to be taken by the therapist. I've got you. You're safe. I know exactly what to do. All you need to do is follow my instructions and engage in the process, and I'll teach you how to do that. So it's not terribly collaborative. It's not what do you think we should do. So in terms of, there's another question about children. We don't do the same process with adults as we do with children. With children, often you only need to do the unconscious core beliefs, and let me tell you how we do that. I came up with a way to quickly change unconscious core beliefs. Why? Because it was just taking too long. And you can use this. I call it the I choose method. I'll give it to you as a gift, just so that you're more effective in your work. So you ascertain what are the unconscious core beliefs just by looking at the homework. There's another thing that you can do. I'll just quickly show you. It's an extraordinary thing that the body will respond strongly when the unconscious says, yes, that's true. What do I mean by that? Well, if you know anything about kinesiology, that explains it. We just use small muscle groups. So for example, I'll hold a hand, hold the fingers like that, and I'll do it this way. And pull against there. Say, I'm Judith, and it'll be strong. I'm a teapot. It will be weak. Say it with your guts. I'm a teapot. Really mean it. No, it will be weak. It's not safe for me to get well. It'll be strong. It's safe for me to get well. I deserve to die. I shouldn't be here. That's one that you've got to change straight away. I do deserve to live. I do deserve to be here. No. So what do you do to change those quickly? Listen carefully. You get the person to stand up. Shoulders back, head up, energy up here, and then you just give them a little push and they easily topple. Don't push too hard. I had one person in a workshop recently. I gave her a little push and she went, pfft. So just be careful, a little push. What happens is when our energy is up here, we are pushover. We are impacted by what goes on around us. What we want is, okay, your energy's up here, now put it down in your thighs. Do it now. Just if you're sitting down, that's fine. Put that energy from here, feet shoulder width apart, put your energy down in your thighs. And say after me, with your heart and your soul and everything that you are, I choose. For every cell in my body, every aspect of who I am, right down to my soul, I choose for every part of me to know I deserve life. No more shutdown survival, no more just existing. No, I deserve life because I matter. I choose this just because I can. I'm that powerful. I get to choose. That is my power. And if they do this with all of them, then you will find that that's gone. And even in doing that with a number of unconscious core beliefs, usually do 8 to 10, even in just doing that, that person's life will be changed. If you change, I deserve to be treated like shit because I am shit, to, I choose to know I don't deserve to be treated like shit. I am not shit. I deserve to be treated with care and respect because I'm valuable. I matter. I choose it just because I can. I'm that powerful. I get to choose. That is my power. If you do that, their whole life can change. Their whole life does change. Instead of ending up in the way they were going, they end up somewhere else. They stop attracting in people who will abuse them, who will hurt them. It's extraordinary how it works. So there we are. We have time for one more question. Okay. No, that looks like it's about it. Well, good on you. We have to use methods that are different. The American Psychology Society Association say that we should only use methods. They don't say we should only use methods. It says we should use methods that have been proven, evidence-based, and we should not close our minds to new processes, new ways of thinking, because that would be detrimental. This is a newcomer. TRTP is a newcomer to the world of trauma. I remember a training a little while ago I was doing, and everyone in the room had at least one PhD. Some of them had more. And went around the room and said, why are you here? You are so educated. Some of you people have studied trauma all around the world. Why are you here? And they said, we've had clients for 10 years, 20 years. What we're doing is so slow and it doesn't work. And yes, EMDR does work, but this is much faster. We have to do something different. There is a tsunami of pain out there, not just in Australia, but in many, many countries. And when you look at the work of epigenetics and how trauma is passed on from generation to generation in the methylation of the DNA. Well, hello, last century, what did we have? 2 world wars, nuclear bombs, God knows how many holocausts, genocides. That builds up. Is it any wonder that we're in the situation that we are? Hurt people hurt people. We need to do something different. There are people out there killing themselves every day. In my own family, 2 family members have committed suicide. I didn't work with them. Obviously, it was before I did TRTP. We've got to do something different, people. This is different. It works. We are starting research projects on it, etc., etc. It's early days. But if this calls to you, if it resonates with you, do go to the website, go to the training page, click on the link at the bottom of the page to make an appointment with me or one of our team. If you are wanting to do some work yourself, I've only just started again after 3 years of just teaching, just taking 1 or 2 clients a week. I'll be doing that for a short time, so you can contact me. If there are any other questions you have, you can go to communications@therichards.traumaprocess.com, and that will get to me through lovely Ken. So thank you, one and all. Have a lovely day, or if you're on the other side of the planet have a lovely evening. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.